Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for April 10th. I'm glad you're here. It's the Easter weekend. It's a long weekend. It's going to be probably very different for a lot of us because we're not traveling to or visiting with family and friends. And it's just going to feel a little different, and that's not terrible. So, but keep those you love close to you. Just not physically. Keep them close to you emotionally, and we're all going to kind of get through this. Okay, so for those of you who have been watching my channel for any length of time, you will know that I am just not that person who says, oh, this happened and I got that right, or I got right what happened yesterday. It's not my style. It's not what I do. And so it's very rare you'll actually hear me say what I'm about to say. So 14 months ago, in February of 2019, which is very, very close. I think this was the first political video I did. It was called Death by a Thousand Cuts. And it was about Trump and what was going to happen and how sort of things were generally speaking going to unfold. But one of the things that I said very clearly in that video is that Joe Biden was going to be the next president. He was going to have a black woman of color, but I was pretty sure black, female vice president. That female vice president is going to, in 4 years, because Biden will only stay in office for 4 years. And again, that is something he announced a couple of months ago, that he only intended to be a one-term president. And that leaves the way for this female vice president to step right into the presidency at the next election. So far, I think I'm pretty close. And I will say that at the time I made that prediction, in February of 2019, I really felt very strongly that Kamala Harris, okay, this is the thing. If she is going to take up any more energy in politics, I'm just going to start referring to her as Harris, okay, because that name of hers and my tongue, they don't seem to work so well. But so that's the story there. So it'll be interesting to see if the final things that I predicted way back then continue to unfold. So that is enough of me stroking my own ego. But for those of you who are new to the channel, and I've made this prediction a couple of times before, this isn't something that I only said once. But for those of you who are new or maybe kind of didn't see the video where it was said, I just wanted to put that out there. So then it would be fitting today that I take a look at the Trump versus Biden election. Now, we'll see if this is actually about Trump versus Biden, or if it is about the GOP versus Biden, because I, along with several other readers, have energetically been feeling that something's going to happen really significant. A lot of us seem to think it's in the summer. I feel July. Something really significant that could actually cause him to just simply leave office of his own volition or otherwise. I'm not suggesting anybody's going to kill him, but, people do get sick. So I don't know. So if that happens, how exactly would the GOP get a nominee up on the ticket? And you can bet they would want to. So let's take a look and see if we get any clarity on that. Here we go. Come on down. I have a question. So tell me about Biden versus Trump election. What's that going to look like? Last one. Okay, well, at the bottom of it, as you can see, you have the Three of Cups, which tends to denote, a celebration, people being very happy, kind of that dancing in the street feeling. So, okay. So right now, the first initial message is sort of this. The campaigns are going to be literally as different as, light and dark. Okay. There is not going to be it. In fact, when you watch the coverage, it's actually going to feel like you're watching two very, very different elections. Like it would be hard to actually know that the behavior is consistent with one election. So they're going to be incredibly, incredibly different. So this is the thing. This is what the country right now is looking for. This is the energy, I think, that they're going to be wanting to see in a president. You're going to want to see compassion and understanding. You're going to want to see stability. You're going to want to see someone who can follow through on the things he says. You're going to want someone who understands the rule of law. These concerns are going to become more and more important. And so that's interesting because it makes you question what's going to go on between sort of now and sort of the more official launches of the campaigns that are going to make those particular qualities or attributes really attractive, be something that the American people are really, really looking for. And certainly a few more months even of Trump, you're going to understand, I mean, we're all, and I'm not even American, just wanting things to settle down and slow down and stop being so incredibly, incredibly erratic. I can tell you, this card represents the Biden campaign, I guess. That's what we're going to label this, and we'll see if it continues to come up this way. But again, a male and a female coming together in a partnership to heal and unite the country. It's going to be interesting to see if this card consistently shows that, but certainly at this point, it's literally to me showing a president, vice president. So again, it's really interesting. We've got this Ace of Swords happening, and the King of Swords. And so it's making me wonder if on some level something is going to happen or be done, or there's going to be some sort of a loophole that gets jumped through. And people just say, you know what, that really was the last straw. And we are now demanding that if you want to be elected, you better have a strategy to fix these loopholes, because that was not what the spirit of the law meant. That was not what the intention was, but somebody used it to frankly damage the Americans or shirk their responsibility. Fix it. It's going to be very interesting to see, because it's coming across really, really strong, is that there's just going to be a sense of there is something that the voters are going to demand get fixed and repaired. And if they don't get that assurance out of their candidate, and you can just bet what side isn't going to give them that assurance, it's really going to become an issue. And then you have sort of this idea of, we're just going to keep spinning. We're just going to keep spinning. We have bamboozled the country for almost 4 years by just keeping everything chaotic and crazy and never answering questions and lying when forced to. That we're going to keep on spinning that way. Why should we have to change our strategy? And what's really weird is I'm getting the same message whether Trump is or is not in office. So that's really curious. It's almost like in some ways the GOP really has no option but continuing to hammer the same drum, even if for some reason Trump is actually physically not in office. I don't quite know why they wouldn't start changing strategy and shifting to something else, but I guess that they figure, thank you, the thinking is if Trump isn't in office, then what they want to do is they want to ensure that they don't lose that really solid base that he has, particularly the evangelicals. And so the idea is to not deviate from Trump's beliefs, Trump's behavior, Trump's messages. And it would be very interesting. I have to say, this just came to me in a bit of a flash. So it's going to be very interesting because I suspect if for some reason Trump ends up leaving office and Pence steps in, he is just going to be he's going to toe exactly the same lines that Trump did, almost as if the campaign is going to be about, making Trump's dream a reality or something insane and crazy like that. But they're not going to step away from the rhetoric, which is insane, right? Because what that does is it just creates more just sort of more confusion. There's no clarity for independents who tend to lean a little bit more right. A different, who don't like Trump and don't like what he does, but their sentiments really sit, center right. Maybe with somebody new who wasn't continuing the rhetoric, they might be more inclined to, go back to a Republican vote. But that's exactly what is not going to happen. And you have to remember, the base is the base is the base. It doesn't grow. It really doesn't shrink. It is that hardcore group of about 25 to 30% of people who will sacrifice themselves, on the altar of the GOP, on the altar of Trump. They don't care. They believe everything he says. They're going to that base, those areas are going to be really, really hard hit by the pandemic because you know what? They won't listen to science and they won't listen to the truth and reason. But again, the twisting somewhere in the GOP has really, really become so twisted that they're not going to step away from that. And I don't see how that's going to work. Yeah, look at here. You've got almost as if the Trump energy or feeling is really, it's going to be what they carry into the election. There's not going to be a pivot, not by Trump and not by the GOP. And so it's going to end up feeling a little bit contagious because you've got one side just like saying things that just have no basis in fact, and then you have the other side that is sort of, listen, this is logic, this is strategy, this is science, and you have the other side who are just like, you can't talk to somebody who's not talking the same language, and that's kind of what you get. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this sort of unfolds. Terry, why are you crying? You need to not be making noise, little boy. It looks very much like the election is going to go ahead as scheduled. Now, are the conventions going to be dramatically different? Yeah, I actually think they're going to be really different. But the election, the voting date, that kind of stuff is going forward. There is going to be a lot of work done behind the scenes in a lot of different communities to try to make voting more streamlined and much more easier. I suspect a lot of states are going to ensure that they have a real strong way for people to do mail-in ballots, that kind of thing. But the election appears at this point literally to be going ahead as scheduled. So it doesn't look like the GOP are going to be able to play significant enough tricks to derail that. And And it doesn't look like they're going to be able to prevent the Democrats from a really, really strong showing. Again, 4 years of insanity, and now this terrible, heartbreaking pandemic. And, you know, the responsibility, the negligence, and the blood all sit on his hands. And that's going to be a very, very hard hill to climb, especially when you don't have a good economy anymore, and especially when the stock market isn't strong, especially when all kinds of people are unemployed. You know, more and more people are not going to be too interested in a sideshow. Yeah, there really is a desire to just get back to normal, whatever normal is in the political arena. I mean, part of it is honestly, people just don't want to have to spend this much time focused and paying attention to politics because you know what? They're scared and they're worried and it makes no sense and they can't trust anything. They want to go back to a time where, you know, they have learned the lesson that you can't just turn over all of your power to the politicians, but they have also learned that, you know what, sometimes less really is more, and we don't want what we have experienced for 4 years to carry on forward. And that really is going to be the energy and the feeling that goes forward as you move towards this election. So the Four of Cups here is kind of interesting because connected to the World card, it feels as if, oh, okay, thank you, I get the message now. So the World card tends to represent the ending of one cycle, a completion, a sense of completion, moving on, and kind of like the beginning of a new way of doing things or a new style. So that makes like really, really perfect sense if you're going to go from a President Trump to a President Biden. And it's going to make even more sense if you are going from milquetoast Pence to a vibrant, female, dynamic, and Black vice president. So there really are going to be some significant sort of shifts and changes. This Four of Cups is interesting because it's sort of saying that this really is the time for people, for the voters, to understand that this election is more about getting Trump out of office and getting somebody in who can start the healing and recovery process. And so for a lot of people, Joe Biden would not have been your choice. Wouldn't have even been your second or third choice. But the reality is he's what you've got. And this is just sort of a reminder that you have to vote blue, even if you don't love the candidate, because you don't want a replay of 2016 when people just said, well, I don't like either of them, I'm not going to vote, because that is exactly how Trump wiggled his way into office. So this is a time for people to start sort of processing the fact that this isn't about getting every single one of your kitchen table issues dealt with exactly the way you want. This is about saving the company and trying to stabilize it long enough to get some of these loopholes filled and to roll back a significant amount of the damage that was done. And when you're talking about the environment and the damage that was done, or the economy and the damage that was done, you have to really look at a bigger picture and not sort of narrow down on a specific personality. So I'm hoping that this card is not an indicator that that's actually going to be a problem again this election. The one who falls is not the one, sorry, the one who falls is the one who does not have a stable temperament and does not have balance, who is not logical, reasonable, calm, and reassuring. To that, becomes the victor. So literally, Trump, the election, Biden. Biden comes out the victor because temperance is sitting in the middle and saying you have to choose. This is your time of choice, America. And if you are ready to let go of the insanity, there's your victor. But it doesn't look like Trump is going to do particularly well. And you know what? When that happens, look at this. You've got a really lovely change of fortune coming, and good news on that front. And you've got the emperor sitting here, and that really does feel like a recovery. The emperor sometimes can represent for me sort of a successful businessman or a successful enterprise, something with strength and substance and solidness. And so that really does feel like if you go Democrat, not only are you going to have the voice of experience in the presidency, but you're going to have vitality and youth and all kinds of energy and passion in the vice presidency. And that is going to be the 1-2 punch that creates a stimulus that gets the country moving forward in a way that is less divided and more forward thinking. There's going to be a fair bit of energy, emotions that come to the surface over the months, sort of between now and November, the election, because the situation within the country is so emotionally wrenching. People are losing loved ones, people are losing friends. Some people who get this and recover are sort of going to be left with some permanent breathing or health issues because of, frankly, the damage to their lungs, I guess. I'm not no medical professional, but it's not like everybody's going to walk out of the hospital ready to go, dance a jig and party till dawn. There's going to be ramifications of it for some. And simply the fact that people are just exhausted. They're exhausted by what's going on in the Trump White House and the Trump administration. They're exhausted by the ridiculous behavior of the GOP, and they're going to be disappointed. They're going to be angry, and they're going to be sort of demanding explanations. And so when they are voting, they're not going to be able to brush some of the crazy behavior under the carpet. That people are not going to let that happen. The spin is not going to work. Sure, there's always going to be some, and hopefully I would really caution people to be really mindful of the nonsense that's going on. These are Trump's partnerships with other countries. There's bots out there by I'm sure, the billions. There is so much Russian disinformation going out. And you know what? That's the thing about Russia. You need to remember this. And China is exactly the same. They have gotten out of Trump pretty much what they needed and wanted. If they can keep him in office for another 4 years, well, that's just allowing them to feather their nest in a way that they couldn't even imagined in their wildest dreams. And unfortunately, that will, so what that does is it's giving these guys a little bit of impetus and power to sort of really, really start spreading disinformation. I mean, apparently in Russia, they're being told that the virus started in America. Because again, Putin is nobody's friend, and he wants this global pandemic to teach the Russians a lesson that, you really can't have that kind of government. You need a government who handles everything and tells everybody what to do and how to do it. And so, and China's not going to be far off, right? I mean, they are not a country that encourages a great deal of civil liberties, okay? So you've got to be really, really careful about the kind of information, the things you're reading. Check the sources. If it doesn't seem legitimate, it's probably not. And more, literally more, if it doesn't pass the common sense test, it's not accurate 99% of the time. Okay, so you gotta, as we're ramping towards the election, you really need to be mindful that you yourselves don't sort of fall into that trap of the misinformation, and it gets passed along and passed along, and then people start paying attention to it. That's where everybody's energy goes, and lo and behold, look what you've got. And don't forget, as you're moving towards this election, it's going to be really, really important to keep your thoughts positive and on the outcome, okay? And as we get a little closer, we're going to talk more and more about sort of affirmations or phrases that you do want to say, and words, for example, that you don't want to say, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But literally what it is showing that with the support and the energy and the motivation and the drive of the people, the emotions of the people are going to bring light where there has been darkness and mystery and confusion and things hidden. And the sun is going to shine, literally. The sun's going to come back. It's not going to be the same old world, but it's going to be a new world, and one you can be proud of. And there's going to be energy to really, really change what needs to be changed for the better. And that imbalance, that's going to be a big part of what happens in the next 4, 8, and 12 years, because certainly for the next 3 elections, I see it always being held by Democrats, and I see it being held House, Senate, White House. But again, that only happens if people stay attentive, if people ensure that they're not promoting lies and misinformation, and if people stay focused on the prize, which is a united and vibrant and strong America. And other countries are going to be doing very similar things because their priority is also going to be getting strong and getting healthy and recovering. And so the friendship of the United States is not going to be as necessary for other countries as our friendship to the United States. Because again, the sooner your allies can be reassured that that anomaly that just happened in the White House, as long that they can feel that there are safeguards so that they don't run into this again now that the loopholes have been exposed. So there's a lot of immense spending to go on, and it's going to get done. It's as simple as that. So right now, certainly energetically, it looks as if there's going to be a healing of the broken hearts and a strengthening of the government going forward. But again, do not expect great, big, huge, wild upsets and revolutionary type behavior. Change, usually when it happens for the best and it sticks the longest, is when it tends to be at least a little bit more gentle. So, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Okay, it's not much of a limb. If Trump continues to be in office until the election, he is not going to win. If Trump is not in the office of president, whoever the GOP puts up is not going to win. Frankly, the economy, the health system, and frankly, the ridiculous, impossible to believe number of casualties from this is simply going to be something that the government, the existing government, is not going to be able to recover from. So, Continue to enjoy your long weekend, whatever it is you're celebrating. Stay very, very safe. Take good care. Be well. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.